Hey, welcome back to our little review show. I'm Benjamin Hernandez, and I'm here to talk to you about Paydirt, a Kickstarter game by Tori Neiman and Crash Games. Now, for those of you that don't know, Tori Neiman's other design was Alien Frontiers from Kickstarter. It hit huge amounts of fame, and really and truly, I think, started the Kickstarter bubble that we are in today that has bursted through the games that we know and love. It's really cool the fact that he went through and did another game with Crash Games, uh, and it is called Paydirt. Paydirt is a great blend of theme and mechanics as you are striving to be a excellent miner company in Alaska, trying to dig up as much gold as you can before the freeze hits in. And throughout the game, you're going to have several things that hinder you, including the weather, your own personnel at times, and even the other players, as you kind of strive to get the best gear and build your engine in the best way possible to try to win the game. So it blends this interesting idea of kind of this economic game with a bidding game, and just a way of making your engine more efficiency kind of style game is the best way to describe it. So we're going to go into the box and show you what's inside. Okay, so I'm going to go right into the component quality here. This thing is amazing. If you look at this cardboard, it is extra thick, extra hardy. Everything about this game is going to be kind of overproduced in a sense, but it actually is a real good bang for your buck in a sense. If you really love components, you're really going to love this element. So we'll start with the rulebook here. It's pretty basic. It covers everything and actually looks like an interesting little dossier that you would read through to get your ideas. A lot of the card errata, or tile errata is in here, as well as the card errata. So you'll be able to read everything fairly clearly. There's a few fiddly rules in there that you might miss, so you might want to play it a bit or watch a play video first, if possible. If there's enough requests to do so, I will do one of those, because I absolutely love this game. Now going on, there's a few things that are going to be in part of the initial setup. This is the central board where everyone's going to have a stake in. Basically, you're going to come here to pick up the various levels of equipment that are available. This is where they'll be stored until the auction phase. There will also be gear along the side of here that you will set up later. And where people will be able to put their workers in here to go and buy gear for them. And then they can also go put their workers on the sales office in order to sell their gold nuggets for some money. Along the side here, you also have your degree track, which will go down based on the active player's hazard card, which will be explained later. But basically, this means that from 15 degrees to 0 degrees, you're looking at a game length based on how these cards are played. And typically, you're going to go through about maybe 10 turns or less, because most of them will allow you to go down a degrees or two. Some are lucky enough to go down 3 if you really want to rush the game. Now, each player will have their own little player board here. This is pretty much an already working engine that you will put your workers on, that you'll be able to assign your workers to different parts of your machinery, and then also have a number of camp gear here, usually 2, that'll help you either increase your claims, which are the little pieces of dirt that you'll be digging from, or your gear area, which will usually help you with your other pieces of equipment or staving off some sort of fatigue or repair. Every time one of these dirt tiles will move on to one of these stages of your machine, it's going to take a wear mark, which is represented by these little hammers and wrenches. And when it fills up, it cannot take any more dirt, and you're going to have to use one of your workers to repair that, usually at a conversion of 1 to 2. So workers are fairly efficient in that rate. Although this machine, while it works, is highly inefficient. You've got 9 different stages here, moving a piece of dirt all the way from a claim through the excavator onto a loader and then through a washer, and then eventually the tile's going to flip over, pay out into this little region, and that's how you're going to get your gold, which of course is what you need to win the game. The winner of this game is going to have the most gold, not necessarily money at the end of the game, so make sure you don't sell off all your gold at the office, although it will give you a unique advantage later on in the game rounds. Alright, so now that we've gotten past the boards, there's 5 of those player boards, by the way. We're looking at also 5 individual player colors, which I've made into little kits here. Unfortunately, the game didn't come with these smaller baggies, so I heavily recommend going out and picking up some of these smaller jewelry bags and making your player kits. But you've got, an orange player, purple player, blue player, red player, green player. Each of them has an initial claim and starts with a certain amount of money. You should always start your game off with those. Then I separated my stuff into 2 stacks of money, the 1,000s and 5,000s. This is all hidden money in the game, so you're really going to want to make sure that when you receive money or you pay for certain goods or use things, you're going to be spending it semi-secretly. So that way people don't have a good estimate of where you are in the bidding phase. Speaking of overproduced, we've got a number of these things here. We've got a no-bid tile, or token, that's made of, thick wood, a giant hard hat to represent the active player, and this little blue cute, barrel that's used to represent what temperature it is. So the no bid is used for when items are bid on in the game. You cannot bid on an item that was previously bid on unless you have a special ability. And usually the auction is going to start with the active player choosing one of the 3 different item types to buy, which I will explain here right up next. Okay, so here's the various items and people that you are going to be betting for in the game. Normally the phases are that you'll refresh these, then you'll go into the active player will start bidding. Once you've bid on something though, the next bid has to be on something else, so that's what that no bid token's for. So there's 3 different things you can bid on here. In the main game, you've got personnel, which are represented by these little portfolio cards. These pretty much give you some sort of special ability. Some of them will also give you an extra worker. Normally you'll start with like 5 of them, and then you can work up to 10 workers if possible, depending on how you want to build your efficiency engine. These guys are pretty important because they give you some interesting abilities, such as Miss Kaylee Wrench down here. Gives you immunity to certain types of hardship cards, whereas other ones might come with... it's not so much a benefit as a hindrance. Some cards will maybe take money from you a bit more than others, or maybe they'll go away after a certain amount of time. They might just be cricket people. And this is actually a pretty good simulation of the game. Not to say that all people are crooked, but some people can be, especially greedy when it comes to gold, which is pretty thematic, and I love it. The next piece of gear that you can buy is equipment. Equipment cards come with the usually improved stages, as opposed to the 3 that you started off with. Some of them do it at the cost of repair, though. There's actually pieces of flimsy equipment that actually break down if they are ever in a state of disrepair, and some of them can't even be repaired normally and will break down if that's the case. Now I'm actually holding up 2 expansion tiles, I believe. No, I'm not. I'm holding up 1 expansion tile, which is listed as an old-timey one. Now the game from Kickstarter that I received came with 3 expansions. One is an old-timey expansion, one is an Alien Frontiers expansion, or at least themed on it, and another one is spectral or ghost and haunting themed. So they came with a personnel card, a few tiles, and about 1 new mechanism per set. And really and truly these are fairly well balanced. Some people could argue they're a little unbalanced or a little unthematic. And if you want to not play with those, it's a little hard to separate them from the standard tiles, as you have to read which tiles they are. There's no iconography other than maybe a special symbol for that set in order to distinguish them, and nothing on the back. Thankfully the art assets on the back are easier to read on these than other ones, but I'll get into that a little later in the review. So the third type of thing that you can bid on are these claim tiles. Claims have 2 different types of claims. Usually they come in one where you can pull dirt from anywhere, and then one where you have to actually do it in order of how it's represented on the tile. And these come in barren, or promising, and rich types of dirt. And each of them pays out a certain amount of gold nuggets based on how likely they are to be populated by gold. A lot of times you can pretty much guess the average. It's like 3, 4, and 5, I believe, with the high ends being like 1 or 2 more, and the low ends being 1 or 2 less. So it's fairly well balanced there, and you'll kind of be able to predict that. Various pieces of equipment and gear that you can get, as well as personnel, will allow you to modify these dirt tiles or possibly make them better, or combine two into a slightly better one. And those are pretty fun to play around with. Now, after the bidding phase is over, people will have to pay up, put in their new gear, and then eventually they'll get into this worker placement phase where they can put out all their workers at once. And one of the places the workers can go is to go pick up these little extra gear tiles called claim equipment and I believe camp equipment. And these can be bought directly from the store, one for every meeple that you put there. And they usually give you some wear cubes that you can put on there in order to use their effect. These can be really great and help your engine out, but they do require repair, or some of them will just simply break down and go away after being used. So keep that in mind. There's a cost listed up here. The other thing I did not bring up is that these also have a minimum bid that needs to be met for them to be bought. You can't undersell them. So you're going to have to be really picky about that. And if you don't have that kind of money, you're actually going to have to like give up your churn to bid for that specific item. And if you don't have enough money to bid on anything, you're just going to have to give up on the bidding process entirely. So we're going to go into a few more components here and show off what we got. Alright, so I went into these tokens here earlier. These are the pay dirt tokens that when you buy a claim, you'll put onto those tiles without looking at them. That way it's a surprise what you get. But most of the time, you know that a Baron's going to have about 2 to 4, which this is a really bad one. I mean, you're always guaranteed at least 2 nuggets for those. Then there's Promising, which has that usually 4 or 5 in there, which this is another great one. And then Rich, which are usually like 5 to 6. What's important to know is that there is a mechanic here. If you accidentally look at one, you have to draw another tile and put it on your board instead. It's very thematic because you never know what you're going to pull up when you're playing the game. So you're definitely going to want to keep these secret from both yourselves and your opponents until they are revealed. Once they reach the end of the track on your player board, once they reach the space, you'll flip them over, take that amount, and put it in your gold reserve. Each nugget is worth about 5k, I believe, if I remember correctly. And you can sell about 2 of them per turn. So ideally, you're going to want to use that money to buy better claims, and therefore get more of these lovely and delicious looking golden nuggets. Now these come in 2 sizes. They have large ones and small ones, and these are the acrylic tokens that we've all learned to love, and they are colored a very nice bullion gold color. That's probably a little hard to pick up on camera, but these things sparkle, and they really, really are solid for the theme. Again, about everything in this game is overproduced. I think the most common component is actually these red cubes to represent the wear counter. I swear they could have given you like little red wrenches as meeples, and that would have been way too much. They had to have one thing that was not quite, up to its brethren. I mean, we even have little meeples. If you look at these, I'm going to pull out a better one. They actually have tiny little hard hats on. They've custom made these meeples for this game, pretty much. I followed this thing through Kickstarter, and it was just amazing quality what you were getting in this box. Especially at the Kickstarter price. I cannot believe the quality of the components I got. I'm going to go right into the last bit. This is probably the most humorous part of the game and probably one of the best parts. But we have these hardship cards. Now what happens is the person who has the most gold is going to be getting the last of these. Starting with the person with the least amount of gold, they get to draw the number of cards equal to the number of players, pick one for themselves, and pass it around until eventually everyone gets one, and usually the person that's in the lead is going to get the one that's probably deemed hardest for them to deal with. You'll also notice that some of these have like little iconography in here that says basically they're one and done, or they'll persist for a turn, or for the next turn. There's also a nice bit of artwork on these. It could have been a little bit better, but I mean, it's gritty, snowy most of the time, except if you got one of the expansions. And it really hits that theme really hard. And then, of course, you've got the degrees up here, which whoever the active player is, whatever their number is how much the track will go down. So that's another point to kind of get some good strategy in the game, is to either make it go longer or shorter based on how well you're winning, by sticking that active player with the highest or lowest amount to go down. I believe these vary from 1, 2, and 3 being the most common. I do not believe there's a single one that doesn't cause the game to go faster. There's no zeros. So the game's always going to be rushing towards that 0 degrees where the ground will freeze over and you'll no longer be able to dig any gold up. I am just so jittery because this game is so great components-wise. Now, the last part of the game that some people have a little difficulty understanding is when you have a tile here at the end of the game. Say you've got like 2 or 3 tiles on your board here. Your very last tile will push down the line as far as it can, if it can. If there's too much wear and tear on your equipment, it won't be able to. But every spot that it goes down, so 1, 2, 3, in order to get to the end, will actually reduce the nugget count by that because it's rushed. And you'll still get a final payout for the end game. So that's another thing to consider when you're working through your various stages of the game and you feel the icy cold winds breathing down your neck as the ground is about ready to freeze. Everything about this game is so thematic. I can't even begin to describe how thematic this game feels when I play it. You feel like you're a miner just, working as hard as he can, commanding his crew to push every bit of these dirt tiles as far as you can and try to get the best ones. And that bidding is just so tense. Every turn you're wondering, oh, well, if I can't get the claim I want, maybe I can still get a good piece of equipment. Or maybe I have to hold on to my money for the next round and try to get better claims. We had games where people were getting screwed out of pieces of equipment, pieces of land. Everything was just so tight in this game, especially when you're playing with a maximum player count. Although I don't recommend it because the game can take a while at that, especially if your group's prone to AP. So we're going to probably wrap that up and go into our final thoughts. Okay, so when I first got this game, I was just sheerly overwhelmed. It came with me with 2 other games from Crash Games. I was absolutely floored by everything. The box has a nice thick cardboard to it. All the tiles are very well arted out, illustrated color. Everything fits that theme so drastically well. The gameplay in itself was great as well. Although it can take a little time, it's definitely rewarding when you play with the right group of people. It's a great way to teach adults and kids about this kind of hard lifestyle that these people live, as well as have fun and kind of turn around and backstab your friends when possible. I have to go down my list here, and I have to say solidly, components are way up there. I have no issues with the components other than one small flaw, which I already brought up, and that's the art of the game. On the back of some of those tiles, it's a little too dark and it's hard to differentiate the two. And for the Kickstarter expansions that came with it, it would have been nice for some sort of iconography to go with that, just so you could pull them out and separate them quickly. Although, thankfully, they integrate well. They feel just like any other tile in the game. And they have a few interesting mechanics that don't break the rules. But they can be a little overpowered. But not in such a way that's game-breaking. So that's really something you got to watch out for with your other players, and you're going to have to do a lot of the player balancing to really figure out the best strategies there. So we're going to give that a solid, 9 out of 10 right there. Art, as we brought up before, it's not too pretty to look at, but it fits the theme very well. I solidly give it a good 8. Again, the graphic design is pretty spot on, except for those few points of contention that I've already brought up. Mechanics-wise, I couldn't ask for something that felt more streamlined. This thing just works just like the engine that you're trying to build. Every phase feels like it goes really well and fits the mechanics. Although the auction can be a bit long, it's part of the game function to keep people having to constantly, trade in one resource for another and really force them to decide what's better, a short-term game or a long-term gain in the long run. And I've seen that matter throughout my various plays. It's definitely solid and worth replaying time and time again, especially since there's so many tiles, you're not even going to see half of them trim through the game unless people are bidding on specific ones. Now, there are some that are clearly a little better than others, but once you get a group that's played it once or twice, you're definitely going to see these new strategies and metas kind of being built up, and people are going to try to counter them or counterplay them, and that's where the real fun of the game is going to be. So, solidly, we're going to give the gameplay a solid 7. It's not for everybody, definitely. For people who don't like bidding games, they're going to probably have an abysmal time with it, but for people who don't like a lot of luck in their games, this is going to be really good for them. Unfortunately, a little bit of luck in there is with those cards, but of course, it can be mitigated. So we're going to give that a little bit of a pat on the back. From my rating scale, I usually share similar views with my written articles. This was one of the second games I actually wrote a review for before actually doing a video review. I'm still going to say I'm going to probably put this at a solid 7.25, which I believe matches up. I don't remember why I dinked it so many points, but it's one of those games, it takes a while to play. So the replayability kind of goes down a bit, which is one of my many, levels I try to review things on. But in the gameplay, it's so varied, the replayability does stay there. It would be it's just a bit of a shame that the length really keeps it from being more accessible. And if you're playing with a good group of people who are not prone to AP, this game's going to do well for you. But you get that one person who starts slowing down the game, and then the rest of the game starts, slowing down progressively. Thankfully, things catch up during the worker placement phase, where things just kind of go all nutsy, and you really only have to worry about player order when people go to that store and try to buy anything. So that's well thought out and is executed very well. It's something that's very refreshing for a worker placement game. So that's going to be all of our review here for Paydirt. I definitely suggest you go out and check it out, at least play it a bit. If you have anybody that really liked the reality shows that this is kind of based off of, or just that way of life, I highly suggest it. A lot of Euro players will really like this, and I know a decent amount of people that live in Canada might find it a little too close to home if they know anyone that works in this line of work. As grueling as it is, I think it still fits the theme very well. So thank you very much for stopping by, and have a great day. Okay, sorry to cut in a little bit here. I gotta talk about this insert. Again, it's made of this thick cardboard, but this welling stuff and the way everything kind of fits in here, it's hard to make the game store very well and keep it organized. I don't know how other people are going to organize this game, but it would really hurt to throw out an insert that looks this pretty and has some great artwork on the bottom of it. It's showing a lot of thought, but in practical use, I've got cards here that are buried. I've got tiles that get shifted around. I can't. It's a nightmare to pull this game out some days. That's one of my complaints. I did not put it into my final review here because I just didn't consider it. I was, again, just awestruck by the quality. And as you can see, it's really hard to get all these cards in here. And if anyone knows any good place where I can find square card sleeves, let me know, because I have not found a good place yet. And I don't know what it is with the producer of this game, Patrick. I know you're out there. Square Cards, man, I love them. They're a great thematic and design point, but they are rubbish to organize. So let me know in the comment section if anyone has any ideas on how to better organize this game, because literally there's just a huge well here and a small well here, and I gotta pack everything in here and just jam it in and hope nothing gets ruined. This game is too pretty to let that happen to it. So whew. God, I love this game so well, so good. Tori Neiman, man, how do you do this? You built a game that feels so thematic. I cringe every time. I'm like, oh, I hope it's the maximum pay value for that gold. Oh, I hope so badly. Are you recording this?
Yes.
Oh gosh, put this in at the end. Tori Neiman, Patrick. I've talked to Patrick on Twitter here. You are a great dude. I cannot believe how much quality you put in this box. I know I'm evangelizing and selling out a little bit, but keep it up. I gotta try out more of your games to see how good they are. And Tori Neiman, you're doing great things. Thanks from Cards and Cardboard. We love this game.